Welcome back to The Explainer. Okay, today we are getting into something really cool. We are breaking down a truly fascinating piece of source material, looking deep into the hidden combat strategies developed by the students of the Great Dreamers Academy. And, right alongside that tactical breakdown, we're tracking the intense, honestly relatable emotional journey of their newest recruit, Ciela. This is a story all about high-stakes tactical training, the incredibly deep connection between a warrior's mind and their weapons, and what it actually takes to step out onto a battlefield when literal nightmares, the terrifying, very real monsters of this world, are actively hunting you. I am so absolutely excited to share this with you today, mainly because it just perfectly blends intricate hard science combat mechanics with raw human psychology. As you'll see, we're going to look exactly at how these students supply their unique individual abilities to survive in an incredibly dangerous reality.
All right, here's the game plan for today's explainer. First, securing the library HQ. Second, battlefield adaptation tactics. Third, elemental counters and magnetism. Fourth, overcoming paralyzing battle fear. Fifth, Arlene's analytics and mentorship. And finally, number 6, the Dream Knight commitment. Let's jump right in.
So to really understand everything that happens next, we have to jump right into the deep end and define the absolute core tool of a Dream Knight. I'm talking about a sigil. Now, a sigil isn't just a generic magic wand or some standard issue sword. It is the literal manifestation of its wielder's identity. It functions as a highly specialized tool that channels and then heavily amplifies a person's natural character traits. For example, let's look at Arlene. Arlene is highly analytical, incredibly organized, and just an unparalleled information specialist. Her sigil, named Christopher, acts essentially like a supercomputer. She uses it to scan vast areas like Central Dream City, relaying live visual feeds and massive complex data packets directly into her mind, all while she's just casually sitting in class. It is the prime example of how these students take their unique, innate abilities and apply them to the world around them. They are literally turning their personal personality traits into indispensable tactical assets.
Okay, moving on to Section 1, securing the library HQ, finding a safe space. Think about it. You can't exactly just start throwing fireballs and altering gravity in the middle of the school courtyard, right? So how do they actually secure a training ground? Well, they execute this brilliant 3-step tactical play that really showcases their intelligence. First up, Arlene uses those amazing information gathering skills we just talked about to completely scout the student council president's schedule and tendencies, and she does this in just an hour. Second, the group submits an intentionally vague, broad application for a special talents club. This gives them a perfect, unquestionable cover for basically any bizarre activities they might need to undertake. Third, and this is where it gets really interesting, they are granted this abandoned, sturdy, 3-story library. But here is the kicker. Instead of using their overwhelming powers to just magically blast away the cobwebs and the dust, they clean the entire massive building manually, with brooms and mops. Why manually? Well, because if the enemy forces out there, or even the strict academy monitors on campus, were to sense massive, unsanctioned elemental surges echoing out from an abandoned building, their entire clandestine operation would be shut down immediately. Discovery spells absolute doom for their real-world survival preparation. So, they put in the physical elbow grease. They end up with a vast, incredibly secure space, acquired through rapid intelligence gathering, which is absolutely perfect for organizing undisturbed combat strategy meetings without tipping their hand to anyone at all. So with the headquarters locked down, it's time for the real work to begin. Section 2, battlefield tactics and an epic sparring match.
Look at the brilliant contrast mapped out here between the two sparring teams. On one side, we have Team Saito, Kieran, and Ariel. Their specialty? Elemental attacks and absolutely crucial support magic. Their combat range is highly adaptable, mostly functioning in the mid-range. Now, on the other side, we have Team Concordia and Mitsuki. Their entire strategy is totally different. It revolves around terrain alteration and vast, long-range area control. What we are watching here is a masterclass in shifting from individual combat to highly coordinated team defense. These students are actively figuring out how to counter incredibly specific technical advantages. And honestly, this is exactly where Arlene shines from the sidelines. She uses her analytical skills to instantly identify the critical weak points in Team Concordia's long-range defensive strategies, and she relays this intel directly to Kieran. She completely understands that Concordia's long-range setups can be severely disrupted if they are engaged with highly adaptable, close-quarters elemental pressure.
So let's break down the opening moves of this sparring match, because it gets intense fast. Right out of the gate, Kieran generates a circulating wind field specifically to protect Ariel.
Now, Ariel is their vital support unit, and in any combat scenario, if a team loses their support unit, a winning battle turns into a losing one instantly. It's the most critical physical constraint they operate under. Immediately, Mitsuki counters. She uses her devastating ability, Torrential Push of the Moon's Gravitational Force. This is not just a heavy gust of wind, it's a crushing, localized gravity well designed to weigh her opponents directly to the floor, literally pinning them in place. Meanwhile, Concordia deploys her sigil, the Kraken Andromeda, locking it into border wall defense mode, and unloads this terrifying volley of thousands of arrows. But check out Curran's response. Instead of trying to block that massive barrage with a solid, brittle wall that could just shatter, he brilliantly alters the aerodynamic flow of the room. He shapes the wind around his team into a high-speed circular rotation, physically knocking those incoming arrows completely off their trajectories. This vividly illustrates just how deeply these students understand not only their magical elements, but the hard physics and terrain alteration required to actually survive.
And from there, the sparring match just escalates into a heavy tactical showcase. Section 3, Elemental Counters and Tactical Escalation.
Let me just ask you this, and really think about it for a second. How do you fly without eliminating gravity? Mitsuki has pinned Kiran's team to the ground with the overwhelming, crushing gravitational pull of the moon. Kiran can't just magically turn her power off. So how exactly does he counter an overwhelming, completely invisible force?
This is where it gets so cool. Look at how these opposing forces clash. Mitsuki is weighing them down using the immense power of the moon's gravity. Kiran realizes he can't just erase her gravitational field entirely. That's her domain. She owns that space. So he adapts his environment. He coats the walls, the ceiling, and the floor of the library in thick iron panels, and he actually creates heavy iron vests for his own team. Then, he flows intense, high-voltage electricity right through the iron, generating a massive magnetic field. He quite literally nullifies her gravity through the opposing repulsive force of magnetism, allowing his team to stand right up in the absolute middle of her gravitational crush. The crucial takeaway here is that they aren't just chucking magic at each other, hoping something sticks. They are aggressively, intelligently exploiting the laws of physics to neutralize incredibly complex defensive formations. It's a master-level tactical lesson on battlefield adaptation.
And a crazy interplay doesn't even stop there. Once Kiran is finally standing, he immediately goes on the attack. He switches to an offensive lion style, launching a torrential stream of raging flames right at Mitsuki and Concordia. But Mitsuki? She adapts instantly. She upgrades her attack to a devastating gravitational black hole maneuver. Think about how a real black hole can strip a star of its burning gases in space. Mitsuki's intense gravity literally weighs Kiran's fire to the ground, completely stripping the flames right out of the air before they can even reach her. Elemental attacks are rendered entirely useless by extreme gravitational physics. It is just a stunning, terrifying display of tactical battlefield adaptation happening in real time.
Now, I want to take a breath and shift the tone for a minute. While all this chaotic sparring is literally tearing up the inside of the library, there is a quiet, profoundly psychological journey occurring simultaneously. Section 4, Overcoming Battle Fear, Tracking Ciella's Journey.
Over in the corner of the room, the newest recruit, Ciella, is watching this devastating elemental clash unfold, and she is in absolute horror. She's completely paralyzed. Every muscle in her body is locked up as she watches the sheer destructive force unspooling right in front of her. Ciella really represents every single rookie stepping into a terrifying, high-stakes world for the very first time. I mean, she's looking at teenagers her own age, flawlessly manipulating gravity, weaponizing magnetism, and bending the fundamental laws of physics, and she is just filled with this overwhelming, suffocating self-doubt. She feels the massive, seemingly impossible gap in power. She genuinely believes, in that moment, that she can never attain the extreme level of skill required to survive against the literal nightmares they face out in the real world. For her, this isn't just a sparring match to learn from. It's a horrifying preview of a war she feels completely unequipped to fight.
And that is exactly when Arlene steps in, with what I think is one of the most crucial lessons of this entire explainer. She looks at Ciella, she sees the absolute panic in her eyes, and she grounds her with this profound truth. She says, "We're not fearless, Ciella. On the battlefield, we constantly have to worry about our own lives." Arlene explains that courage isn't just the magical absence of fear. In reality, they are all terrified every single time they step out there into the unknown. But they survive because they trust their comrades to watch their backs. They rely heavily, deeply on the structure of their team to compensate for the very real fear they all individually feel.
This brings us perfectly to our next phase, Section 5. Arlene's Analytics and Data-Driven Mentorship.
Look at how this data completely builds Ciella's profile. Arlene uses her sigil, Christopher, to actually mathematically quantify Ciella's psychological traits. Check out the metrics here. Ciella has incredibly high baseline stats for leadership and support. However, on the flip side, she has very low scores for proactiveness and confidence. Arlene isn't just guessing about how to train her. She is using hard, quantifiable data to understand exactly what kind of warrior Ciella could become, and more importantly, exactly what internal emotional obstacles are currently holding her back from reaching that potential.
So Arlene takes this complex, hard magic system of their world and breaks it down into highly accessible, grounded psychological truths. She explains that every single human has an elemental affinity, which, when you think about it, is really just a reflection of a natural talent or a core character trait. Weaknesses, like Ciella's low confidence, aren't permanent scars. By understanding them and isolating them, they can actually be transformed into powerful strengths. A sigil is simply a tool designed to channel and fiercely amplify those natural traits. Based on this precise, individualized data, Arlene designs a custom training program specifically tailored to Ciella's psychological profile. It beautifully proves that being a Dream Knight is just as much about mental comprehension and emotional regulation as it is about raw, explosive physical power.
This all builds toward our final section, the emotional and structural climax of the explainer. Section 6, the Dream Knight commitment and the ultimate stakes.
Arlene lays out the ultimate stakes of developing a sigil, and it's intense. A sigil evolves through 3 distinct states. First is the dormant state, which is mostly used in everyday non-fatal situations. Next is the active state, where its true form is determined by the wielder's elemental affinity, like Concordia's massive bow or Kieran's elemental control. But the final, most advanced here is the living sigil state. At this level, the weapon becomes fully autonomous. It acts as a dynamic partner based entirely on the wielder's deepest, most honest intent. And here is the absolutely terrifying catch that Arlene warns her about. If you forge your sigil while consumed by negative emotions, paralyzing fear, or unchecked self-doubt, it can actually turn into a cursed weapon that actively harms you. Your mindset is literally the most critical tool you possess, far more dangerous than any sword or spell.
Hearing this, Ciella is faced with a massive, life-altering choice. She fully understands the risks now. She has seen the terrifying, chaotic power of her peers tearing up the room in a sparring match. She knows for a fact that a sigil forged in fear will destroy her from the inside out. And in that pivotal moment, completely contrasting her initial terror, she makes an undeniable commitment. Conquering her paralyzing self-doubt, she firmly, resolutely declares, "I've decided. I want to become a Dream Knight." It is the direct, beautiful result of Arlene's brilliant, structured guidance, the harsh tactical reality of the sparring match she just witnessed, and her own deeply forged internal resilience. Which brings us to the end of today's explainer, and I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought based on the source material we just covered. We've seen how these incredible students adapt to extreme battlefield conditions, using magnetism, gravity, and raw elemental forces to protect each other. But more importantly, we've seen how they have to conquer their own internal data and fears just to survive. So ask yourself, if a sigil is a true, unfiltered reflection of your soul and your daily mindset, what would yours become? Would it manifest as a cursed weapon built out of your anxieties and fears, or a living shield forged entirely from your courage? Definitely think about that. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I absolutely look forward to exploring our next topic with you.